Hello, children. Are you ready to hear a story? Oh, that's wonderful, because I'm ready to tell a story. Oh, and here's the storybook. Everyone's ready. Let us begin. Oh, the story of the ugly duckling. Our story begins early one morning. Mama Duck was waddling back from the pond where she loved watching the beautiful sunrise. Mama Duck would have liked to have stayed longer, but she had a nest full of eggs to attend to. As Mama Duck happily made her way back to her nest, she came upon a strange-looking egg. She looked around to see if perhaps the egg's parents were nearby, but no one was there. She waited to see if they'd come for their egg. She waited and waited and waited, but no one came. Well, she couldn't just leave the egg there. Finally, she decided to take the strange egg home and care for it. When she arrived back at the nest, she gently placed the strange egg amongst the others and gave it a little kiss. "Don't worry, little one," she whispered. "You're safe now." Sometime later, as Mama Duck was sitting upon her eggs, she suddenly felt a little nudge from underneath her. Quack, quack. One of the eggs began to hatch, and then another, and soon the air was filled with the sweet chirpings of baby ducklings. Oh, hello, little ones. Oh, but one egg didn't hatch. It remained quiet and still. It was the strange egg. What is growing inside it? Mama Duck wondered. A short time later, the strange egg suddenly began to shake. The duck family stood around the egg, eagerly watching its shell fall away. Well, the little something that emerged looked nothing like the other ducklings. It was bigger and rounder, and the colors of its feathers was much different from their own. "Oh, what is it?" one of the ducklings asked. "Why, he's your new brother," Mama Duck replied happily. Well, new brother or not, the ducklings thought he was very strange, and for that matter, ugly. And from then on, that is what they called him, the ugly duckling. Well, the word soon spread, and others began noticing the peculiar duckling. One time, a sparrow whistled laughingly down from the treetop. "Look, there goes the ugliest duckling in the land!" There was another time when a pair of chipmunks stopped to watch the ducklings parade on by when they caught sight of the ugly duckling and burst out laughing. "What an ugly duckling!" Oh, the ugly duckling couldn't understand why he was so different and why everyone laughed at him. It was so painful. And so, late one night, while everyone was sleeping, he quietly snuck away into the dark. The poor little ugly duckling roamed about the countryside, and whenever someone would come around, he'd quickly hide so they wouldn't see him and laugh. Well, time went by, and the seasons changed, but the ugly duckling's pain remained the same. One morning, as they sat beside a little pond enjoying the beautiful sunrise, a flock of geese landed on the pond right beside him. The ugly duckling didn't have time to hide. Hi. The geese all looked at him and smiled. The ugly duckling was puzzled. The geese weren't laughing at him. "Hey, why are you here all alone?" asked one of the geese. Well, it's a long story," replied the ugly duckling. I guess it's because I'm ugly." The geese looked at each other, and all began to laugh. "You see," said the ugly duckling, "nothing has changed." "Well, perhaps more has changed than you think," said another goose. "Well, take a look in the water and see for yourself." The ugly duckling slowly waddled to the edge of the water, looked down, and there, looking back at him, was the most beautiful bird he had ever seen. It had snowy white feathers, a long neck, and deep, piercing eyes. "Who's that?" he called out. "Why, it's you," said the goose. "Well, you are a swan." "Huh? But how could..." The ugly duckling was so confused. He took a deep breath and again looked at his reflection. And there he was, a beautiful swan. I'm a swan. I'm a swan, he sang out, flapping his grand white wings with his head held up high. Sometime later, Mama Duck was sitting and watching a beautiful sunrise when she suddenly heard the flapping of wings, and beside her landed the most beautiful bird. "Hello," said the swan. "Do you recognize me?" Mama Duck had never seen the swan before, but somehow he did seem familiar. She looked deep into his eyes and caught a glimpse of her long-lost duckling. "Oh, my, how you've grown. Oh, welcome home, dear one. Welcome home." Mama Duck wrapped her wing around the beautiful swan, and they sat quietly together, enjoying the dawning of a new day. The end. Oh, what a moving story. I hope you enjoyed it. See you next time. You know, if you click on the like and subscribe buttons, you'll never miss a story. Oh, storybook. Kids, you're already here. Have you been waiting for me? Well then, without further ado, let the story begin. Oh, the story of Little Red Riding Hood. Once upon a time, on the outskirts of a forest, there lived a mother and her dearest daughter. The daughter was known in the village as Little Red because she was born with a head full of bright red hair and big, round, reddish cheeks. As Little Red grew up, she spent much of her time in the woods. Now, most would say she had quite the imagination, but for Little Red it seemed perfectly normal to chat with all the friendly animals and sing along with the birds and the bees. On her 8th birthday, Little Red's grandma, who lived on the opposite side of the forest, made her a special red hooded sweater. Little Red loved it and wore it everywhere, and ever since, she's been known as Little Red Riding Hood. One day, Mother called her over to the kitchen. "Oh, dearest, I have a special errand for you. I need you to bring some soup over to Grandma's. She's not feeling well." "Oh, dear, sweet Grandma. Of course, I'll go right away." "Now listen," said Mother. "I've heard the neighbors talking about a wolf in the woods, so please stay on the trail and go straight to Grandma's house." "Oh, yes, of course, Mother. I'll reach Grandma's house in a flash and take good care of her." Little Red Riding Hood quickly put on her beloved hooded sweater, took the pot of soup, and set off to Grandma's house. Oh, she loved walking through the forest. There were always new things to discover. She planned to go directly to Grandma's house, but just as she was about to turn onto the trail that led her there, she heard the buzzing of happy bees. Oh, listen to that bee chorus. Wow, they've discovered a field of flowers. I could collect a bouquet of flowers for Grandma. She just loves flowers. Woohoo! And so she put the pot of soup down and joyously began collecting flowers for Grandma. As she did so, she chatted with her new bee friends. I'm sure these flowers will help Grandma feel much better. Say, have any of you ever visited my grandma's garden? It's just down the trail, right beside the creek. Now, it turns out that the bees weren't the only ones listening, for lurking in the shadows was the wily wolf.
No, poor Grandma is weak from illness, huh? Perhaps I'll go and pay her a visit as well. Yeah, she'll be my appetizer, and once the girl arrives, I'll eat her as the main course. And ever so quietly, he snuck off towards Grandma's house.
A bit later, when Little Red Riding Hood arrived at Grandma's house holding the pot of soup and bouquet, she discovered that the front door was open. How strange, she thought. Hello, Grandma? She then heard a raspy voice call out,
Yes, my dear, I'm here in the bedroom.
Oh, Grandma, you really do sound ill. Little Red Riding Hood entered the bedroom. Grandma was lying in her bed wearing her sleeping cap and had the covers pulled up to her eyes. And yet, something seemed strange. Grandma, your eyes, they seem so big.
Oh, yeah, the better to see you with, a raspy voice replied.
Oh, and your ears, they too have grown.
Oh, the better to hear you with.
And slowly, Grandma began to lower the blanket. Oh, your nose, it's grown as well.
The better to smell you with.
And finally, Grandma sat up, revealing her whole face. Oh, your mouth, your sharp teeth.
Yeah, the better to eat you with.
The wolf leaped out of the bed towards Little Red Riding Hood, who immediately threw the soup straight into the wolf's face, causing him to howl loudly. Oh! She then hit his snout with the flowers and ran towards the door. Just as she opened it, in flew her bee friends, who had followed her to Grandma's in order to visit her garden. They swarmed around the wolf, stinging him with all their might. Ow! 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 The wolf howled so loudly, "Ooh!" that Grandma, who he had swallowed whole, came flying out and landed straight onto her bed. The swarm of bees chased the wolf out of the house and deep into the forest. Oh! Ow! Oh! Ow! Oh! Ow! Oh! Aye! Oh! 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 Ow! A while later, Grandma, now wearing clean pajamas, lay comfortably in her bed with Little Red Riding Hood beside her, holding her hand. Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't have any super flowers for you to enjoy.
No, my dear, don't be silly. You brought me the greatest gift of all.
Really? Well, what's that? Grandma smiled. You. And they lived happily ever after. The end. Oh, what a great gift and a great story, too. I will see you next time. Bye-bye. If you like our stories, click on the like button. And if you want to hear more stories, just subscribe to PixieBooks.
Oh, thank you for the ride, Storybook. Oh, hello, children. Are you ready for a story? So are we. Oh, the farmer's story. Once upon a time, there lived a farmer who worked a small plot of land with his wife and young son named Josh. Now, this was in the old days when horses helped till the soil. The farmer had a working horse named Charlie. He was strong and sturdy. Josh's morning chore was to gather hay soggy from the morning dew and carry it over to Charlie, who loved soggy hay. He would eat it all in seconds. Nom, 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 nom. Josh's nightly chore was to go to Charlie's stall and brush him. He would clean his coat from all the mud and dirt. And when Charlie was nice and clean, Josh would gently pat Charlie on the nose, wish him a good night, and close the stall behind him. One morning, as Josh arrived at Charlie's stall with a fresh heaping of breakfast hay, he stopped, dropped the bucket, and let out a scream. The farmer heard the scream and ran over to Josh. "What happened, son?" Josh pointed at Charlie's stall with tears flowing from his eyes. The stall door was open, and Charlie was gone. The family searched the area for hours, calling out to Charlie, but he was nowhere to be found. That night, as the farmer sat beside Josh on his bed, Josh was still weeping. "What are we going to do? Oh, this is so terrible." The farmer hugged his son, smiled, and said, "Ah, son, things happen for the best. And the best thing to always do is give thanks for what you have right now." Josh heard his father's words. Well, I'm thankful that you're my father," he said, as he slowly closed his eyes and fell asleep. The next morning, Josh woke up to a familiar sound. It was Charlie neighing outside his window. Oh, but wait, whose neigh is that? And that! And that! Josh ran out of the house to discover Charlie happily bucking about with a whole herd of horses. The farmer and his wife joined Josh and joyously stood watching the horses at play. That was a very busy day. The family had to make room for the new horses. They would sell a few to make money to build a bigger barn for the new horses. There was a lot of excitement on the farm. That night, as the farmer sat beside Josh on his bed, Josh smiled at his father and said, "We're so lucky. Isn't it wonderful?" The farmer smiled and replied, "Yes, things happen for the best." Josh smiled back and said, "I'm thankful for you and Mama and for the new horses." A week passed, and one day the farmer was taming one of the new horses. The new horse wasn't used to being told what to do and gave the farmer a kick in the shoulder. The farmer had to go to the hospital for a week. Finally, the farmer was able to come home, but was still bandaged up and wasn't able to work. That night, Josh came to sit by his father's bedside. Josh was sad and said, "Look at you. What bad luck." "Remember," replied the father, "things happen for the best." Josh gave it a thought and smiled. "I'm so thankful you're home." The next morning, the family was awakened by loud banging on the door. They all got up and came to the door together. When they opened it, they were surprised to see a number of soldiers standing there. The soldiers looked at the farmer and said, "A war broke out. We're here to recruit you to the king's army. Josh's heart sank. He couldn't even imagine his father going away to war. But before he had time to say anything, the farmer smiled and said, "I'm sorry, but as you can see, I couldn't help you even if I tried." The soldiers saw his wounded shoulder, nodded, and left. When they closed the door, Josh hugged his father. "Oh, we're so lucky. If you'd been healthy, they'd take you off to war." The farmer smiled. Like I said, things happen for the best. All we can do is give thanks for what we have right now. And the family lived happily and thankfully ever after. The end. Oh, I'm so thankful for that story. That was truly the best. And now, bye-bye. Did you like the story? Then click like.
Hello there, children. Do you wish to hear a story? Here's a wonderful story about wishes. Once upon a time, there was an old fisherman. He lived with his wife in a small broken hut by the sea, in the middle of pretty much nowhere. They were very poor. Every day, the fisherman would go out to the sea and wait for the tide to come so he could find fish to bring back home for dinner. One day, as the fisherman sat by the sea, he felt a sudden pull at his line. The fisherman carefully pulled it out of the water, expecting to see an ordinary fish. But what he pulled out was no ordinary fish. Oh no, you see, it was a gold flounder. Do you know what a flounder is? I'll spare you the Google search. A flounder is a flat fish that lives at the bottom of the ocean, and this flounder was shimmering gold with blue sparkling eyes. Truly a beautiful thing. The fisherman was quite surprised, but he was even more surprised when the fish started speaking. "Dear fisherman," said the gold flounder, "let me go, please. I'm an enchanted prince, and if you release me, I'll grant you 3 wishes." The fisherman didn't want to return home empty-handed, but he felt sorry for the fish and let him go. Splash! He landed back in the water. "Oh, thank you, dear fisherman. Now, what is your first wish?" The fisherman thought, "My dear wife is always complaining about our run-down hut. Well, now there's a chance to fix it. Well, if you could, I'd like you to fix my home. It's broken, small, and dirty. If you don't mind, that's my wish." The gold flounder nodded. "Very well, it's done. You can go back to your home, dear fisherman. Thank you for sparing my life." When the fisherman got back home, he couldn't believe his eyes. His wife was standing at the door of a brand new cottage with a red roof and green windows. She was very happy. "Oh, dear husband, how did it happen?" The fisherman told her exactly what happened. When he finished, she told him, "If the magical fish could give us this cottage, why not ask for a bigger house with gardens and a car in the driveway?" The fisherman was confused. "Dear, we were given this cottage as a gift, as our first wish. I don't want to anger the magical fish. Why can't we just be satisfied with this house?" "No, husband. Tomorrow you go back to the sea and ask for a bigger house. You saved this prince's life. For sure he won't mind." And so the next day, the fisherman went back to the sea, and when came the tide, so did the flounder. "Dear flounder," he said, "I'm sorry to bother you, but my wife, well, she'd like a bigger house." The flounder nodded. "All right, dear fisherman. That's your second wish." The fisherman walked back to the house, and guess what? Yes, where a cottage once was, now stood a big stone house, surrounded by gardens and a driveway with a brand new car. But his wife was not done yet. "If the fish could grant us this big house, why not ask for a castle with tall towers and 100 rooms, servants and guards and limousines?" "Oh, but my dear wife," said the fisherman, upset, "we already asked for a bigger house, and the fish was nice enough to give us one. We don't need such a grand castle." His wife shook her head. "Go back and ask for a castle." And so the next day he waited for the tide by the sea. "Oh, dear Flounder, I'm sorry to bother you again, but my wife wants to be the queen of a castle." The Flounder nodded. When the fisherman returned, tuxedo-wearing servants greeted him and escorted him onto a huge driveway with sports cars and limousines, then into a giant castle with the roof made of gold, cooks, and many gardens. His wife sat on a big throne with a golden crown upon her head. "Well, you must be happy now," he said to her. But oh no. "If the fish could give us this castle—" "What could possibly be bigger than a castle? Well, you already have it all, and we were only given 3 wishes." She shook her head. "Nonsense! I am now the queen, and the fish must do as I command. Get him here to live with us as my servant." The fisherman tried to argue, but there was no point. The next day, with a heavy heart, he went back to the sea and sat by the water, sad. "Dear magic fish, I'm sorry, but my wife, the queen, wishes that you come live with us and grant her all the wishes she might have forever." The fish stared at the fisherman for a few moments and simply said, "Go home." He dove back into the water and was never seen again. The fisherman went back home, but when he arrived, the castle was gone. No cars or servants or gold-coated doors. Instead, he found his wife sitting on the ground, no crown in sight, next to their old broken hut. "Come, my dear, let's go back home." And so they did, and they lived there together, poor but grateful for each other. The end. Oh, what a magical tale! Say, children, if you met the gold magical flounder and were granted a wish, what would you wish for? Well, take your time and think about it. Bye-bye for now.
Did you like the story? Then click like.
Oh, hello, children. Are you ready for a story? Oh, that's marvelous, because I'm ready to share one. Oh, here's the storybook. It looks like we're all ready. So, let's begin today's story. It's called A Christmas Carol. It was a snowy Christmas Eve, and everyone in the village was bursting with excitement. Soon there would be presents under the tree, stockings full of chocolate, and grandmothers telling you how much you've grown. But there was one man, old Ebenezer Scrooge, who didn't like Christmas at all. His neighbors felt sorry for him and tried to cheer him up. Children sang carols in front of his house. His relatives invited him for festive meals, but all he would say is, "Oh, go away and leave me alone." So, in the end, he got his wish and found himself all alone on Christmas Eve in his big, dark house. When it was time for bed that night, he said to himself, "Oh, only one more day and Christmas will be over. Hurrah!" And then, with a smile, he fell asleep. Sometime during the night, bright flashing lights woke him up. He had never seen such a thing, and just as he was about to pull the covers over his head, he saw a sparkling figure coming closer and closer. "I am the ghost of Christmas past," the visitor said. "Rise up and follow me, and I will show you what has been." Scrooge wasn't afraid because he felt the ghost seemed friendly, so he got out of bed to see what would happen next. Suddenly, they were in the countryside. It was like a dream. "We can see others," the ghost explained, "but no one can see us." In front of them stood an old school. They entered and saw that it was empty for the holidays except for one boy who was alone in a cold, drafty room. Scrooge gasped, "Why, that's me, when I was a boy." Then he saw his sister run into the school. She flung her arms around the boy and cried, "I'm here to take you home for Christmas." As he watched the scene, Scrooge wiped a tear from his eye and said, "Oh, my sister had such a good heart." The ghost nodded. "Now you understand," he said. "That means my time with you has come to an end." The ghost's sparkles slowly faded until he was gone and Scrooge was back in his bed. He was woken from a deep sleep again that night. Someone was knocking on his window. He went to open it, and a figure swept into his room. "I am the ghost of Christmas present," she announced. She too seemed friendly in her long dress made of swirling snow. "I will show you what is," she added. Scrooge reached out to catch a snowflake, and just like that, they were watching over a family enjoying their Christmas dinner. There was a father, a mother, and lots of laughing children. Their house was much smaller and simpler than Scrooge's, but it was bright and warm. "That man works for me," said Scrooge. "He's lucky to have such a happy family." The ghost of Christmas present smiled. "I have something else to show you." Then, with the fluttering of her snowy dress, they flew outside to a narrow street. There, they saw a long line of people leading to the baker's shop. Some were laughing, some were singing, some were huddling together to warm up. "They're waiting to warm simple meals they've received in the baker's oven," the ghost explained. "Have they no homes?" Scrooge asked. The ghost shook her head. "No, but they have each other." Scrooge sighed and thought of his big, dark house. "Someone should offer them a warm place to stay," he said. The ghost nodded. "Now you understand." Then, spinning like a snow flurry, she rose up into the sky, and Scrooge was back in his cozy bed. A third time, he was woken in the middle of the night by a rumbling in the fireplace across from his bed. He sat up and looked toward it. "Santa Claus?" he asked. A slim, hooded figure emerged from the fireplace, brushing ashes off his dark robe. He shrugged as if to say, "Do I look like Santa Claus?" "Let me guess," said Scrooge. "You're the ghost of Christmas future. You will show me what will be." The dark figure nodded. This time, Scrooge felt scared, but he drummed up his courage and said, "I know you're here to help me be a better person. Can you speak to me?" But the ghost only pointed straight ahead and moved forward like a dark cloud. Scrooge understood that he was to follow. As soon as he did, they were on another village street. A group of people Scrooge recognized were chatting. One person mentioned a man who only cared about himself and wasn't nice to anyone. Another person agreed, yes, he doesn't share anything with anybody, not even at Christmas. Scrooge thought about what he'd heard.
Could they be talking about me?
He asked. He turned to the ghost, who slowly raised a bony finger pointing at him.
Oh no!
Cried Scrooge.
Why do I only think of myself? Why do I never think of others?
The ghost tapped the side of his head. The message was clear. Now you understand. And with that, he spread out like a gray fog and vanished. Once again, Scrooge was back in bed, but this time he woke up to the rays of sunshine coming in the window. He looked around his bright room, then out the window to the snowy rooftops beyond.
It's Christmas morning,
he cried with delight. Then he jumped up, rushed to his window, and looked out. He saw that same man that works for him walking towards his house in the street below. He opened his window and called out to him,
Can you help me? I'm having a big Christmas party at my house tonight. There will be lots of food and presents and warmth for all. Invite your family. And could you please tell everyone you see? I do it myself, but I'll be too busy making my home cheery and bright.
The man let out a whoop and rushed off to share the news with everyone he saw.
Being with others is so much better,
Scrooge realized.
I'm glad I have lots to share to make this the merriest Christmas our village has ever had.
The end. Oh, what a touching story. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you have a merry, warm Christmas. See you next time.
If you want me to tell you when I have a new story to tell, just click on the bell.
Hello, children. Are you ready for a story? Oh, fantastic. Perfect timing, storybook. Today's story is called The Little Match Girl. This story is a special one because some people think it's sad, while other people think it's happy. No one can seem to settle it. Once upon a time, a little girl lived with her parents in a small house in the city. It was the coldest New Year's Eve in years. The roof of their home had holes in it that they had stuffed with rags. But still, the icy wind got in. Brrr. Sadly, the little girl and her parents were not only cold, but very hungry, for they hadn't eaten in days. The little girl decided she would go out and sell some matches so she could buy food for her family. She loved them dearly, and seeing them suffer broke her little heart. Her parents didn't want her to go out in the cold, but the little girl was determined. Her mother said, "If you must go, at least wear my slippers to keep your feet warm." They're much too big, but they're better than nothing. The little girl set out into the icy streets with a bundle of matches to sell. New Year's Eve parties were happening in the houses all along the street. Warm candlelight spilled from the windows of the homes, along with smells of delicious food, including her favorite roasted chicken. Yum! She was crossing the street when suddenly a carriage charged by. The horses knocked her backwards into a snowbank, and the slippers fell right off her feet. Before she could get up, a stray dog ran over, snatched the slippers in his mouth, and disappeared down an alley. The little girl was too weak to chase the dog, but she was not going to give up. She wandered shivering through the night, crying, "Matches for sale?" But no one bought any. The snow kept falling and the wind howled. The little girl's feet were completely numb, her fingers aching and her ears stinging from the biting chill. She thought of going home, but when she looked around, the snow was so thick that she was lost. She couldn't call her parents because back then, phones hadn't been invented. She finally collapsed in the corner next to a mansion.
huddled up against the brick walls in hope of escaping the wind. She struck a match against the brick and warmed her fingers over the bright flame. Then the strangest thing happened. Right there before her eyes appeared a huge fireplace with a crackling, joyous fire that warmed her all over. But the match quickly burned out, and she was left once again in the dark and cold. The fireplace was gone. She struck a second match, and this time she could see right through the bricks into an elegant dining room. There was a long table with a crisp white cloth and beautiful dishes piled with every kind of food she could desire. In the middle was a perfectly roasted chicken. The chicken floated towards her, but just as she reached for it, the match went out. In its place was the cold, wet wall. She lit another match, and this time she saw the biggest and most beautiful of holiday trees, sparkling with pure magic and lights. Those lights reached so high into the sky that they became stars. Just as the flame went out, she saw one of the stars fall. This reminded her of her grandmother, who had always told her that falling stars granted wishes. She missed her grandmother terribly, but when she lit another match, her grandmother was right there smiling at her with rosy cheeks, wearing a toasty shawl. "Grandmother, don't go!" the little girl cried as the match went out. Determined to keep her grandmother near, she scraped the whole handful of matches against the bricks. This time, when her grandmother appeared, she gathered the little girl up in her warm, soft arms. Together, they floated up towards the stars, where there was no hunger, cold, or sadness, just love, peace, and joy. The next morning, on New Year's Day, the little girl woke up and was astonished to find herself wrapped in a blanket in front of the fireplace at home. Her parents were sitting nearby in the glow of the crackling fire with steaming cups of coffee. Strangest of all was the smell of delicious roasting chicken. She looked around for her grandmother, but instead saw the lady from next door. She realized her grandmother was just a dream, but this neighbor had found her, carried her home, and shared firewood and food with her family. She still missed her grandmother, but her heart and belly were filled by the neighbor's kindness that saved her life. The end. So, friends, what do you think? Is this story happy, sad, or both? That's for you to decide. Bye-bye. Did you like this story? Ho-ho! So let me know by clicking on the thumbs up.
Hello, children. Hello, Storybook. Oh, today we have an especially hair-raising story for you. It's called Rapunzel. Once upon a time, there was an evil witch. She was a very lonely old witch, and so, to cure her loneliness, one day she did a terrible thing. She stole a beautiful baby girl and hid her away in a little room at the top of a high tower. The tower had no door for entry and no stairs to climb, and only a tiny window at the top. So the witch would fly up to the window on her old broomstick and care for the child. The little girl had the most beautiful yellow hair, which is why the witch noticed her in the first place. The witch named the child Rapunzel, after one of her favorite herbs. After many years in the tower, Rapunzel grew into a beautiful young woman, while the witch grew older and even more evil. Her broomstick became so old and crooked that she kept crashing into the tower instead of flying in through the window. Rapunzel had never cut her beautiful yellow hair, so now it was very long indeed, and the witch fashioned it into braids that could reach all the way from the tiny window to the bottom of the tower. Now, when the witch visited, she stood at the bottom and yelled out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair!" Rapunzel answered, "Surely, of course, I'll let down my hair if you tell me your name, if you say, 'Who goes there?'" And the witch yelled,
It's me! It's me! It's always just me! Well, who else could it be?
"Oh, it's you," said Rapunzel, and she threw down her long yellow braided hair for the witch to climb up. When she was alone, Rapunzel would sing to herself for hours and hours. One day, a young prince rode through the forest quite near the tower. His name was Prince Handsome Pants, because he was a prince and he wore very handsome pants. The rest of him was very handsome too, especially his face, which was especially handsome. When the prince heard the song, he stopped in his tracks. He was enchanted by the sweetness of the voice. He had to know who was up in that tower, singing with such a beautiful voice. But there was no door for entry or stairs to climb. So he hid in the forest near the tower and waited. Finally, as night fell, the old witch approached the tower and called out,
Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair!
And you know how it goes from there. The very next day, when the witch was away, the prince stood at the tower and called, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair, because, it's me." And he pretended to be the witch.
It's me.
So when he climbed up Rapunzel's braided hair and appeared at the window, needless to say, Rapunzel was very surprised. But she calmed down when the prince handed her his princely ID card, which identified him as Prince Handsome Pants. "Oh, well, your pants are indeed very handsome," said Rapunzel, "as is the rest of you, especially your face, which is especially handsome." And she gave him a kiss, and he gave her one back. And, oh glory, they agreed to get married, which seems a bit fast, but it is a short story. "I do want to get married," said Rapunzel, "especially to you. But I'm trapped in this tower. Oh, what are we to do?" The prince said he'd think on it all through the night. He'd come back tomorrow, and then we'll take flight. But early next morning, before the prince could arrive, the witch came for a visit, to Rapunzel's surprise.
Rapunzel,
said the old witch,
have you, my dearest, by any chance, been seeing a very handsome prince with very handsome pants?
The witch was holding the princely ID, which Rapunzel had sadly forgotten to hide. Rapunzel had never told a lie. Just this once, she'd give it a try. I don't think so, she said. The evil witch raised her hand in the air and, flick, sliced off Rapunzel's lovely, yellow, long hair. Then, before Rapunzel could even say, "Hey!" flick, the evil witch sent Rapunzel away. Laughed the witch with a cackle and a twitch.
You should have known, Rapunzel. I'm not one to betray. So I've sent you to the desert, and there you will stay.
Then the witch heard a voice from below. Rapunzel, Rapunzel, throw down your hair? I think that's what I'm supposed to say. Oh, and it's me, the prince, by the way. The witch tossed one end of the braid out the window and down to the ground. She held tight to the other end and stood there, not making a sound. Then finally, with a heave and a ho, Prince Handsome Pants appeared at the window. Oh, hello. Hi, stammered the startled young prince. I'm just, uh-oh. The witch smiled wickedly and said, "Oh, I can see the surprise in your big, handsome eyes. But now, I'm afraid, the handsome prince dies." And then she let him go. Down, down, down fell the poor handsome prince. He landed with a shriek, "Oh!" and a wince in a big thorny bush on his big handsome tush. No, he wasn't quite dead, but the thorns scratched him all around his handsome head. Even with that, he didn't quite mind, but the thorns scratched his eyes, which left him quite blind. Day after day and night after night, the prince wandered the forest with no direction or sight. Until one night he stumbled out of the forest and climbed a high desert dune, and then slipped and fell, straight into the arms of Rapunzel, who was able to recognize him in the light of the smiling full moon. She covered his faces with kisses and tears, and the kisses and tears must have been somehow magical, because somehow magically his eyes were unsealed and his blindness was healed. Prince Handsome Pants could see again. He looked at the beautiful face of his beloved Rapunzel, and he smiled and he said, "Rapunzel, my fair, I just love what you've done with your hair." And they went off to his kingdom and lived handsomely and happily ever after. And as for the witch, well, her broom ran out of power, and with no way to climb down, she got stuck in the tower. The end. Oh, I just love when everything works out. Okay then, see you next time. Bye-bye. If you would like to be a part of the PixieBook family, just subscribe to our channel.